Well, that was our diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams. Let's cross live to Washington. Let's speak to Kristine Berzina, who's Managing Director for German Marshall Fund North. Thank you so much for being here on the programme. Your take in terms of your analysis of that attack on Moscow today?
I think it's a very important moment in the war today when you see the first attack on Moscow. There were the drones over the Kremlin, but this is taking the war to the Russian people. It has been over a year, and frankly, since Crimea, that Russia has been waging a war on Ukrainians, on Ukrainian soil. And so, yes, we don't have attribution right now from Kiev or the official authorities on this, but the likelihood is that this attack is from a Ukraine-affiliated group, if not the Ukrainian military itself, and in which case it is an expression of the realness of this conflict, of this war for the Russian people. If Ukrainians and if those in Kiev who get attacked night after night, running for over a year into bomb shelters in their basements, if they have been living like this, then mostly Russia has been immune. Conscripts, of course, have had to fight on the front lines, and there are volunteers who have fought. But for the average Russian, the war has been relatively abstract. And as of today, as of these drone attacks, it isn't abstract any longer. It is something that could hurt them in their homes in the way that Russia has been waging a war to hurt and to kill Ukrainians in their homes. The attacks from Russia on civilian, on residential infrastructure, on houses, on hospitals. This has been, the terroristic element of this war. And right now we see that in this pre-offensive, or maybe in the first moments of this counter-offensive that Ukraine is launching, it is a difference not only in the power that Ukraine is bringing to take back, but potentially for those who support Ukraine or Ukraine to say this war is not going to be fought on Russia's terms, that Ukraine is capable of setting different terms.
If that analysis is correct, what are the risks? Because I just read out from the White House, they're trying to obviously find out a little more about what was behind today's attack, but went on to say we do not support attacks inside of Russia. We've had the official denials from Ukraine, but there's always been real worry, certainly in Western capitals, of the scope of Ukrainian attacks spilling over into Russian sovereign territory. What do you think are the likely consequences of that, if that's what we've seen?
So I think that we are seeing Ukraine, or those who support Ukraine, play a very delicate dance here. It is really important for the Western partners who support Ukraine not to have their equipment used, in particular in Russia, and they do not permit and do not want Ukraine to be striking within Russia itself. That is different from what the voices in Ukraine, not all, but some, might want to see happen. And when we saw in Belgorod these Ukrainian Russians who had been trained in Ukraine, who then wanted to go back in Belgorod, and these strikes in recent weeks. That is a different example of something that is not quite Ukrainian, but is against Russia. And that balance is important because Ukraine does not want to jeopardize the support of the West. And the West, in particular the United States, Germany, are countries that are incredibly fearful of escalation. And so as we look at next steps, we'll have to see, where were the drones made, who is operating them. The technical details about what was used and how it was used will be very important in the question about what kind of escalation is there, and is there escalation at all.
Exactly what our BBC Verified team are looking at as we speak. Just a final quick thought, if you would, because we've seen the 17th straight day of attacks on the Ukrainian capital. In terms of tactically what you think the Russians might be doing, is there a possibility here that they're focusing on Kyiv to somehow tie up the various defences from perhaps the battlefield site where any counteroffensive may come?
It's important for Russia to try to weaken Ukraine as much as possible before an attack. If Russia wants to win, as they do, they want a weaker Ukraine. But the air defense systems that are protecting Kiev are going to stay in place. And so if they are trying to run them down of ammunition. This could be perhaps a precursor to more significant strikes in Ukraine later. It's, of course, related to the counteroffensive, but it isn't as though that which is used to protect Kiev is going to immediately move to the front lines. There are things that are staying relatively in place, but I would worry that a desire to dramatically run down the ammunition that the air defense systems have, their ability to protect the city, that in fact could open the city up for other kinds of attacks in the future from Russia. Again, this isn't a one-for-one. The front line is enormous, and now when we are seeing strikes in Russia and strikes across Ukraine, it's a very complicated chess game, and we just have to try to keep all of it in mind as we navigate what is happening right now and what's going to happen in the future.
Kristine Berzina, thank you so much for joining us live from